Welcome. My name is Christopher, as you all know. This quarter, I have been asked to teach a lesson on, this series on Christian evidences. Now, I happened to teach this from my own material about somewhere between 12 to 15 years ago. I don't recall the exact date. And then about 7 to 10 years ago, I hosted a video series on the same topic. And so I think it's been long enough. We can probably circle back and maybe go ahead and recirculate some of this information. Part of this was kind of to get new and current information as well, and I think I'll be bringing some stuff that maybe those of you who have remember the class that I originally taught, it will be new to you, and so I'm really happy to do that, pretty excited. Just as a disclaimer, Christopher is not an expert on this. I am not this is a topic of intense interest of mine, but I am not an expert on it at all. I do like things that are scientific, and I do like things, information that relates back to the Bible and how those really support each other. And so I'm actually pretty excited to get this taught. Another thing to recognize, Christian evidences is an immensely broad topic. It's also immensely deep, okay? You could easily spend an entire year teaching on this and only scratch the surface. I had to kind of filter things down to that which I thought would be useful and also understandable as well. Expect a lot of details to be a bit glossed over because there's just not time enough to teach those things. So what we want to do tonight is kind of open up with an introductory lesson on worldviews. It's true, in this world, not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody holds your values. Not everybody holds your views on the world. And that comes from a lot of different things, from both how you were raised, your background, even your geography, what you may be exposed to growing up, to just how you think, what it is that you come to resolution when it comes to truth. You can kind of fit people into two different categories: those that have some sort of concept of an acceptance of a divine nature. So those different religions of the world. Up there we have Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism. Christianity, of course, is represented. But there's another group of people that really do not even consider the divine realm as something that exists. And so people that are atheists, anti-theists as well, modernists, postmodernisms, all of those viewpoints are certainly out there, and they do influence people. What you hear on the TV may not align exactly with a Christian viewpoint. So if we look at the dictionary view of what a worldview is, we have a number of them listed there on the screen. Merriam-Webster, a comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. Oxford English, a particular philosophy of life, a concept of the world held by an individual or a group. Even Wikipedia says it's a fundamental cognitive orientation, how you think of an individual or society, encompassing the whole of knowledge and viewpoints. So if we kind of try to boil this down a little bit, well, what is a worldview? It's essentially kind of a broad-based perspective or framework. It shapes an individual or society's understanding of reality, about the world, and about human life. It includes everything from the values you hold, the beliefs you hold, your attitudes, assumptions that you make, actions that you do, how you view your neighbor and what they think. Encompasses different aspects such as, the philosophies, emotions, ethics. Essentially, it is an enormous framework that is within you that lets you interpret the world, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're thinking. Well, why is it even important that we maybe address this in a Christian evidences type of lesson. Basically, you have a worldview, whether you think about it or not. And I'll tell you right now, on a day-to-day basis, I'm not walking around going, I wonder what my worldview is today. No, it's embedded within you. It's ingrained in you to such a degree that it's just how you operate, and you can't really separate yourself from your worldview. You can describe it, but it's how you view the world. It's like the rose-colored glasses that you put on. You're wearing them all the time. Well, God wants your world filter, your rose-colored glasses, your way of thinking, how you interpret the world around you to align with His. Okay, Romans 12:12, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed, be changed by the renewing of your mind. Well, that renewing of your mind is setting a new worldview for yourself so that you may prove what the will of God is. Well, prove what? Well, we're supposed to basically prove God by giving Him glory through our lives, right? We give Him glory and honor, and other people see that, and they can see what our worldview is. What the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. In other words, we're trying to align with God's worldview because that is, purity, if anything else. Also, Philippians 2:5, have this mind in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. In other words, align the way you think with how Jesus would think. And like I say, this happens on a daily basis. This happens all the time because it's something that's really integrated into you. It helps you determine what's right and wrong, what's true, what's not. And we should be ready to defend, a Christian worldview. Oftentimes we should just ask ourselves, well, what would Jesus do? Because that in a sense lines our thinking with what Jesus would think. So the problem is, not everybody thinks the way we do. Unity of the Spirit and things like that. There's other people who just don't believe it. And I've asked myself this question, I'm sure probably many of you have, which is, why do so many obviously intelligent people prefer to believe that there is no God? It just floors me to know that there's very intelligent people out there and they just deny God, left and right. So why is that? Well, part of it is we pride ourselves on, our freedom of choice, and that was God granted, of course, at least in our worldview, it's God granted. And being free moral agents, having that right to make our own decisions, to choose to do either good or to do bad, or to act in particular ways, are clearly some of the reasons why people will choose to even deny God or to hate God. Okay, I would say this last election season has illustrated the diversity of worldviews within our own country today. So this isn't anything new. If we go back to the time of Joshua, we know that when they were about to enter the promised land, that Joshua got up in front of them and said, you got a choice to make, people. And reading out of Joshua 24 here, if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, well, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in the lands that you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so in this case, Joshua was saying, I'm sticking with God. I'm aligning my worldview with Him. I'm choosing Him. And he was exercising that right of choice. Joshua's point could not have been made any clearer. He had the freedom of choice. So did the other people at that time, to either believe in God or not believe in God. And that rolls forward to today as well, as we look around at our neighbors, coworkers, etc. So for the moment, let's go ahead and look at a few of the different, and I'm going to call these positions that people who choose not to believe in God take. The reason I call them positions is because you can just lump them in one giant category that says you're a bunch of people that don't believe in God. So that's the grouping. But why? Why is it they don't choose to believe in God? First one isn't too hard to understand. It's the atheist. Their position is simply God doesn't exist, and they can be very bold and vocal about that as well. If we look here, Carl Sagan, well known to many of us here, he was an astronomy professor at Cornell University. He did pass away already. He died in 1996. But before he did that, he hosted a very popular TV series that was on PBS called Cosmos. And through that, he promoted endlessly that, in the quote up there, the cosmos is all there ever is and all there ever will be. And that we are essentially stardust, that we come from these naturalistic processes out in space, the birth and dying of suns and of solar systems, and that through evolutionary type processes, we have come to be in the status of the universe that we know it is to due only to those processes. There is no God. Well, if you're an atheist, though, it's a little difficult to defend that position. The reason is because you're assuming that you know every single fact in the universe. You know every piece of information out there. And if you don't know something, if there's something left to be discovered, something that's left unknown, even if it's just one piece of information, that may be the one single fact that God does exist. And so you will not hear atheists talk about these types of things, and the reason is because they just sweep it under the cover, under the carpet. It's basically, God doesn't exist. I'm boldly telling you that, though they can't prove it. And so there's a difference between just, believing in it with no proof and actually proving it. So an atheist has a difficult time with that. The next position would be the agnostics. And by the way, you guys have probably seen, these positions before in the past, but I think it's good to review them rather quickly here. The word agnostic means without knowledge. And their position is that, well, really, you can't know whether God exists. There's just not enough evidence to convince anybody. You can't come to a conclusion on it. In essence, the agnostic says, I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows, nobody can know, and so I just don't believe. Okay, so not a very strong argument there, but that's what an agnostic is all about. The next position is being a skeptic. A lot of people even claim that they're skeptical of different things. It's not necessarily a bad term, it just means it's like I'm approaching a particular topic with a lot of I'm just not going to believe everything that you tell me, so I'm going to be a bit skeptical. When it comes to God, though, a person says that they doubt that there is a God. Okay? Dictionary definition is revealing and says that the doctrine that true knowledge or knowledge in a particular area is uncertain, and who has doubts concerning the basic religious principles. This would be the skeptic. So they're not saying you can't know, they're just saying it is very uncertain that we know this. And what does that do? It holds them back from believing in God, of course, because they're just saying, I just don't know if you're not convincing me. Okay? So the final position would be the infidel. Okay? You've probably heard that term more in with Muslims, right? Muslims use this a lot. We are all infidels to the Muslim religion, especially the ones that are a little more aggressive. But in general, an infidel is a person who not only refuses to believe in God, but also is intolerant and actively opposes anybody who does. These are These are people who will be very vocal against your beliefs and essentially want to change the mind of everybody they come into to not believe in God. They speak out against God. They condemn it. A lot of them really despise God, the Bible, anybody who believes in it as well. On the screen there is Richard Dawkins. He is a contemporary of ours. He's alive and kicking today, and he is quite viciously outspoken against Christianity. He enjoys getting together large groups of people and coaching them on how to demean and denigrate Christians, and probably other religions too, but I think Christians are one of his more favorite targets in order to, to basically make you feel really bad about being a Christian and believing in God, and so consequently bring in doubt and maybe hopefully change your mind about that. The difference between, so the question was, how's an infidel different than an atheist? An atheist is outspoken about doubt, saying there is no God. An infidel is, I'm on a warpath. I'm going to go and I'm going to change your mind, and I'm going to do it in a very aggressive way. Okay, so they're just like they're an atheist, but they are convinced it's their mission to stamp God out. So if we look around us, you probably can identify people that are around you that probably fit into some of these categories. Whether it's neighbors, friends, or family, the people that you work with, even the people that maybe you follow on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever those things that you guys tend to get involved with. But celebrities or politicians, other figures that are very much in the public eye, what do they believe? And how is that influencing you? For myself, I have some family members that are very outspoken against God, and so those can be challenging. If your favorite country western singer, is an infidel and is always going against what you believe, then, should be listening to that person or not. Should this, and does it seem necessary that you need for yourselves strong and valid evidence of your faith in Christianity, of your worldview? Why would that be? And that's not a question to answer, because it's more of a rhetorical question, because I don't have time to get through all these slides if I take too many questions. If the answer is yes, if you answered yes, there should be strong and valid and truthful information to support your belief in the Bible, the belief in God, then you might ask yourself, well, what is it then I can expect from God in that area? Okay, so let's ask that. What can we expect from God to help support us in our belief, in our worldview that includes Him? Well, everybody knows the past is a little different than the present. And in the past, God made His presence known a lot more directly. So Grandpa Adam, Grandma Eve, they got to walk with God in the cool of the evening. Now, that must have been pretty spectacular, okay? We get up to Moses, God spoke to him out of the burning bush. And there was communications to him and Aaron about the plagues and what to say to the Pharaoh. They saw the Red Sea part in front of them. Manna fell from the sky. There was, the pillar of fire. All these things that God did for those individuals. They were there to experience that. Even Job, although, for the most part, Job didn't know what God was up to, at the end, God did speak to him out of the whirlwind. So there was much more of an experiential type thing going on there. And of course, the prophets, whether it's verbal or through visions or other types of interactions, they got to experience God more directly. Certainly, probably the premier, the epitome of all of that is at the time of Jesus. His name means God with us. Jesus, God Himself, walked with the apostles, walked with the disciples. and the people at the time of when he was alive here on this earth. They got to see the healings, the feeding of the thousands. I can imagine Peter, Paul and James, sorry. Peter, John, and James, seeing the transfiguration of Christ. Here's Jesus, who looks like a man that they've walked with, that they believe in, and then they get to see him in his glory. Oh my goodness, what an amazing, life-changing event that must have been. And of course, all of the other things that happened during Jesus' time. So again, much more direct communication with God. Well, what about us though? I have not seen God face to face, and I suspect most of you have not either, because you probably wouldn't be here. You'd either be dead or you'd be up in heaven. So because of that, we have to, do things a little bit differently. As Hebrews 1 says, God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers in the prophets in many portions and in many ways, in these last days he's spoken to us through his Son, whom he appointed heir to all things, through whom also he made the world. And so what we see here is God changed his mode of communication. It is now being channeled through what Jesus was here to teach us. If we go back to, Thomas, when he was really doubting, was this the resurrected Jesus standing before him? Jesus said to Thomas, because you've seen me, you have believed. Well, Thomas had that benefit. You have believed because you had the direct evidence in front of you. Jesus went on to say, blessed are they who did not see and yet believed. Paul, of course, tells us that for us, we have to walk by faith and not by sight. And so, faith and no sight, I don't know if that seems fair, but what it does say is that we still have the requirement, I would say, or maybe the responsibility is another better word, that God does expect us to know about him, okay? 2 Peter 3:18, but grow in the grace and the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Well, how do we do that, okay? Yes, we have the Bible. Yes, we have God communicating to us through his written word. But how do we put faith in that? Well, that's kind of what we want to do is find ways to support the truth that we find in the Bible. And we need to know how to go about that. Ecclesiastes 3 says there's an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven, time to give birth, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to uproot what's planted, to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, a time to build up. At least for us, it seems that in our time, direct manifestations of God and his power are really no longer an event or in effect. And so we have to resort to other ways. So again, let's ask that question. What can we expect from God? For you to be able to grow and increase your knowledge of God, first of all, information about God must be available. We have the scriptures. Is there more? I would challenge you that the answer to that is yes. That information must be accurate and represent the truth. Okay, if you're going to support your worldview, if you're going to support what you think is true, certainly you want to base it on information that you believe and could be proven to be true and accurate. Information must be consistent and non-contradictory. We get challenged, Christians get challenged, the Bible gets challenged all the time about it being contradictory, that the scriptures in there are inconsistent, that they disagree with each other. And, there's plenty of books on that side of the fence, and there's also plenty of books that you can get out there that basically dispel those contradictions. We need to make sure that when we're believing in truth, that information is not going to be contradictory. It's like, well, Otherwise, what do we believe, this thing or that thing? Finally, the evidence must be sufficient to build confidence in those things that are not directly testable. Things in the spiritual realm cannot be tested by us. Jesus told his disciples, he says, how can I even tell you about the spiritual things when you are having a very difficult time understanding me about the physical things that I'm talking to you about? And so if we can't go and test the spiritual things, then there has to be proxies for that. We have to be able to maybe see the evidence in other ways that is more testable, more verifiable, that we can then utilize to bolster those things that are untestable. Basically, for us, it's really hard to go to God and, attach some sensors to him and prove that he exists. That's the challenge that a lot of unbelievers give to us. It's like, well, you can't even see him. You've never seen him. You've never heard him. You've never smelled him. How do you even know he exists? Because he has not, presented himself to your five senses that you can believe in. But you still believe. Why is that? Well, there's other ways to go about that. So, for this last part of the slide here, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident. Oh, what did God just tell us there? Well, he told us that which is known about God is evident. It's something that we can understand, okay? It's evident within them, for God made it evident to them. We didn't go to God. He came to us. And he says, you can know about me because I've made it evident. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes. Well, what are those? Well, that's like who he is, his power, his personality, how he thinks about things. It's how he does things. It's his humor even. all of this is your invisible attributes. None of those are very tangible. It's how we interpret what you communicate to the rest of us. But it's also how God communicates to us as well. And those invisible attributes are communicated very similarly in what he tells us about himself. So those invisible attributes, those are the things that he's made evident, including his eternal power and his divine nature, have been clearly seen. Well, seen by who? Well, seen by us, but more importantly, seen by the unrighteousness of men up in number 18 up there. And they have been understood through what has been made. Oh, now God's pointing us to where to look. It's his creation that is out around us, that he made for us, and we can see these invisible attributes based on what he's done. He said that so that they are without excuse, and that they are the people, the unrighteousness of men up there. They should have no excuse. God's attributes, God's presence, the existence of God in general is available to us through looking at the creation. So, we can expect from God that he provides evidence of himself to us. We don't get the experiential part like the people of the past did, but we are able to see God in the creation that's around us. And that's what we want to look at. We're talking about evidences that are supporting Christianity. So much of the remainder lessons will focus on some of those types of things. Understandably, this is a lifetime endeavor. This is something that you just have to continue to look at, learn. That doesn't mean that your faith is needing a lifetime of work. looking at geological formations, for instance, in order to feel that you can believe in God. But looking at those geological formations can certainly build your faith. All right, so like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a very broad subject, and we need to scope this down, okay? What I have up here is kind of a spectrum of belief, starting on my left, but basically on the creator side there, where people believe in a creator. They believe that the material universe was intentionally created by a creator who is both superior to it and external to it, or exterior to it. Sounds like paint, actually, exterior paint, yeah. All aspects of the universe were designed and implemented by this creator and done in a short period of time. Humans are accountable to that creator. If we go to the other side of the spectrum, where we're talking strictly about nature, then those people believe in that the material universe, and by the way, you're going to hear that phrase a lot, material universe. And what that is it's basically everything that's physical. So flesh and bone and wood and all those types of energy, plastics, metals, rocks. That's the material universe, okay? It's important to distinguish that so that we also make allowance for a spiritual universe. But for the material universe, this came into being either because it was always here, again, speaking of the nature side over there, or because it literally popped out of nothing, okay? That's what their theories will tell them. From the point it existed, natural processes alone are responsible for the state of the universe today. So how we got to what we have today all happened because of the laws of physics, laws of chemistry, the natural processes that run. There is no divine being. No gods need to apply on that side of the spectrum. Okay, it is simply nature alone. And finally, humans are not accountable to this non-existent divine being. They're only accountable to themselves or perhaps to society at large. Then in the middle of this spectrum, we have a group of people that try to combine the two. And I want to touch on that before we end here. That's where we have a creator, but we also have nature taking a prominent part of the stage in how things got to be the way they are. They believe that a creator exists, but use naturalistic processes to bring about the current state of the universe. And, so you're blending the two. So I'm going to scope it down a little bit further here, again, because we just don't have enough time in this quarter to go into all of these things. On the creator side, I'm going to simply talk about, oh my goodness, young earth creation, okay? That's literally Christians accepting a literal reading of the Genesis account of the Bible. A day is a day. Something happened on day one, something happened on day two. 24-hour period. On the naturalistic side, we have the general theory of evolution. You guys are very familiar with that because you can't turn the TV on and not hear about 65 million years of time and millions of years of this and that and the other thing. There's also other modified versions of that. One is called punctuated evolution. We'll probably touch on what that means somewhere down the line. Then we have in the middle the blending of a creator and the naturalistic processes, the gap theory, day-age theory, and general theistic evolution. Okay, combining the Bible and evolution. I want to treat that middle section because I'm not going to touch on it anymore. We're only going to talk about the two end pieces in further lessons. If we try to combine the Bible and evolution, it's typically because evolutionary ideas have crept into and persuaded Christians of the necessity, generally speaking, of long ages. If you look at the Grand Canyon there and you look at all those thousands and thousands of layers, you know, doesn't it seem reasonable that that took like a very, very long time to build? You know, maybe even millions and millions of years for all those layers to get stacked up like that? That seems reasonable, maybe, okay? Well, it turns out these people are convinced of that. And so consequently, because of evidences like that and the perception that it probably took a long time, these Christians have tried to, you know, blend together those geological times to the Bible itself. Understand, evolutionists want nothing to do this. Like I said, no gods need to apply in their worldview, right? This is only, these types of views are only held by people who actually believe in a God, okay? Problem is, particularly in the biblical account, these theories are fraught with all sorts of issues. If you fall into one of those categories and want to talk about that further with myself, I would be glad to point you to a lot of very good resources on this. Theistic evolutionary theory, I'm going to try to blow through these as fast as possible. Do we go to 7:40, is that right, Robert? Okay, I got 4 minutes here. So basically, theistic evolutionary theory is just that God was involved and he did it over a long period of time. He used evolution to accomplish the act of creation. If you look at Thomas Hayden's quote up there, it, meaning evolution, is an everyday phenomenon, a fundamental fact of biology, as real as hunger and unavoidable as death. Those concepts have been, you know, integrated into the idea that science is telling us that the Bible must have long periods of time in it. Interesting note, science is not, or evolution is not science. Science is an area of knowledge, it's a topic of interest, something to study. The scientific method is a procedure to put forth a hypothesis, an idea, and then test it and see if it's got truth to it, to see if it's right. That is not evolution. Evolution is just a theory. It's not a fact, okay, as he's saying it. Facts are proven beyond any reasonable doubt and are subject to verification processes such as being falsifiable. Falsifiable means that you can do a test to show that it's wrong. We can't do that with evolution. The fact is, our good friend Sir Arthur Keith, he lived from 1866 to 1955. He was a Scottish anatomist and physical anthropologist specializing in human evolution. He's quoted as saying, "The conclusion I have come to is this: the law of Christ is incompatible with the law of evolution. The two laws are at war with each other." He also said, "Evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it only because the only alternative is special creation, which is unthinkable." Meaning they cannot allow God into their worldview whatsoever. Because of that, because evolution is something you cannot test in its full naturalistic processes, it's unprovable, it's unfalsifiable. It can never be a law, it can never be a fact. The next one is the gap theory. I'm going to go very quickly with this one. The gap theory is this. You read Genesis, the gap theory will wait. And maybe even we'll not get to it, but I think we can go fast on the next one. So thanks very much for your attention. Appreciate everything, or the one question that I did get.